When an empath finally goes no contact with a narcissist, something profound happens, something that the narcissist never anticipates. The dynamic between them is not just a relationship in the ordinary sense. It is a parasitic bond, one in which the narcissist feeds off the emotional responsiveness, empathy, and psychological availability of the empath. What the narcissist loses in that moment is not merely a person. They lose their supply, and that loss strikes at the very core of their constructed identity. You have to understand this about narcissism. It is not simply arrogance or inflated self-esteem. At its core, narcissism is a fragile, defensive structure built to conceal deep, unresolved inadequacy. The narcissist survives by manufacturing an illusion of superiority, and that illusion can only be sustained by securing external validation. The empath provides the perfect stage for this illusion to thrive. Through their patience, compassion, and willingness to forgive, the empath becomes the mirror that reflects back the narcissist's grandiosity. But it's a mirror that's kept intact at the expense of the empath's dignity, sanity, and peace. When an empath walks away, when they go no contact, it creates a fracture in that mirror. The narcissist is no longer able to manipulate, provoke, or extract emotional reactions. And what's left is silence, deafening, punishing silence. That silence is not neutral. For the narcissist, it is evidence of power slipping away. The empath's absence communicates a truth the narcissist cannot bear. They are no longer in control. Control is everything to a narcissist. They may not always be overt in their domination. Sometimes it's subtle. Emotional manipulation, gaslighting, rewriting history, or passive-aggressive guilt. But it's all designed to maintain one thing, the upper hand, the illusion that they are superior, that they are essential, and that the empath will never leave. This control is not merely strategic, it's existential. It's how the narcissist avoids the unbearable task of confronting their true self, which is often riddled with shame, self-loathing, and the echoes of abandonment or trauma they never integrated. When no contact is initiated, the narcissist is stripped of the ability to dictate the emotional terms of the relationship. They cannot bait the empath into conflict, cannot sweet-talk their way back in, cannot plead or rage or seduce their way into relevance. They are cut off from the very feedback loop that reassures them that they still matter. And that realization is psychologically destabilizing. Imagine standing on a stage that's been built just for you, with the lights beaming down and the crowd watching. Then, suddenly, the lights cut off, the audience leaves, and you're left alone in silence. The show is over, but you never prepared for life after the applause. That's what the narcissist experiences when the empath disappears. The applause stops, the admiration vanishes, and all that remains is the growing, festering truth. Without an audience, there is no performance. And without performance, there is no self. What makes this collapse particularly brutal is that narcissists are almost completely externally defined. They don't develop an inner moral structure or a sense of identity rooted in integrity or truth. Their self-concept is built on other people's reactions. So when the empath who once reacted with pain, tears, pleading, or passion becomes silent, it's not just rejection, it's psychological annihilation. It says to the narcissist, you no longer have power here. But here's the deeper truth. This collapse is not the empath's revenge. It's a natural consequence of false power being exposed. The narcissist believed they were the puppeteer, but the empath's exit reveals that the strings were never as secure as they thought. The strength they believed they had was never theirs. It was borrowed from the emotional depth and goodness of someone they tried to belittle. There is something profoundly spiritual in this. When you remove yourself from someone who drains your soul, you don't just reclaim peace, you dismantle a lie. And that dismantling causes the narcissist to crumble. It's not cruelty, it's clarity. The collapse of the narcissist begins with the empath's silence, but it ends with the narcissist's confrontation with the self they worked so hard to avoid. For the first time, they are left alone with their emptiness. No one to impress, no one to shame, no one to validate their illusion. And that is where the suffering begins. In the end, the empath's choice to go no contact is not an act of hatred. It's an act of radical self-respect. And ironically, it's the one move that forces the narcissist to confront the only thing they've ever truly feared, their own reflection, unfiltered and unadmired. And maybe that's the message we all need to hear, that freedom is not always loud. Some it's silent times, it's simply walking away. And in that walk, you carry more power than the narcissist ever did. When an empath finally enforces no contact, the narcissist experiences a profound loss, but not in the way most people think. It isn't grief for the relationship. It's not sorrow, and it certainly isn't regret in the conventional sense. What the narcissist actually experiences is panic, a deep, destabilizing fear that stems from losing access to their favorite weapon, emotional leverage. That leverage was never about love. It was about dependency. Emotional, psychological, even spiritual dependency. The narcissist had grown reliant on the empath's responses and, more importantly, on their forgiveness. You see, the narcissist is not interested in resolution. They are interested in cycles, repetition. They thrive on instability. And they create chaos not to destroy the relationship, but to feed it in a parasitic loop that always brings the empath back to them, either in anger, in explanation, or in hope. The narcissist doesn't fear losing the person. They fear losing the game. And when the empath goes no contact, the game ends. The narcissist is benched. Worse than benched, they're ignored. And for a personality that survives by being the center of emotional gravity, being ignored is far more brutal than being hated. This is why narcissists collapse after no contact. Because what dies isn't just their control over the other person. What dies is the illusion of superiority they built in their own mind. The idea that they could always win, that they would always be chased, forgiven, and needed. Narcissists often interpret a partner's empathy as weakness. They believe that because you've stayed, you always will. They mistake your grace for gullibility and your compassion for compliance. So when you finally go silent, not with rage, not with threats, but with peace, it short-circuits their internal narrative. The narcissist begins to question their power. They send messages. They bait with guilt. They may even try to provoke you through triangulation, hoping jealousy will draw you back in. But when you remain unresponsive, their anxiety rises. And not just because they lost control, but because they realize that the thing they've depended on, the echo of your empathy, has fallen silent. It's as if the light they used to see themselves has been turned off. And in the darkness, they're left with what they really airing empty, insecure, and utterly alone. Psychologically, this collapse is not dramatic at first. It's slow, subtle. The narcissist becomes irritable, frantic, and confused. Their false self, the identity they've carefully constructed and imposed on others, starts to deteriorate. They don't know how to function without an audience, without someone to project onto, to mirror them, to absorb their costs. The empath, who used to be the primary container for all their dysfunction, has walked away and taken with them the emotional scaffolding the narcissist leaned on to feel significant. And this is the bitter irony. The narcissist needed the empath far more than the empath ever needed them. But they could never admit that. They built an entire illusion to avoid confronting it. And now, in the absence of attention, in the vacuum of silence, they are forced to see the cracks. Their anger may rise, their manipulations may intensify, but these are not signs of strength, they are signs of collapse. What happens next often shocks them. They realize slowly and painfully that they can't replace you. Not because you're irreplaceable in a romantic sense, but because what you gave, emotional depth, patience, authenticity, was never transactional. You loved from a place of truth. You stayed far longer than you should have. And your departure wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of survival. The narcissist may seek out others, hoping to fill the void, but no matter how many new people they pull into their orbit, none of them will offer the same unguarded sincerity. That kind of emotional presence is rare, and they know it, even if they never say it. Eventually, if they don't face themselves, they deteriorate further into bitterness, obsession, or even a full psychological breakdown. Some narcissists implode, turning inward in self-pity. Others lash out, projecting blame onto everyone around them. But all of it stems from the same truth. They underestimated the quiet power of the empath, and they overestimated their own hold on the dynamic. What makes this revelation so significant is that it redefines what strength looks like. Strength isn't found in domination. It isn't found in control. True strength is found in boundaries, in saying enough, in choosing silence over chaos. When the empath draws that line, they're not just walking away from abuse, they're reclaiming their soul. So if you've gone no contact and you wonder whether it mattered, know this, it did. It forced the narcissist to face the one reality they've spent a lifetime avoiding, that their power was borrowed, and that without your light, they are exposed. And maybe that's the deeper lesson here, that walking away isn't about escape, it's about restoration. When you stop feeding what drains you, what collapses is not you. It's the lie that said you were powerless.